What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I am going to be starting the Saturn through the houses synastry, and I'm going to be speaking about having your partner's Saturn in your first house. Whenever somebody's planets fall into your first house, it is going to spark this immediate sense of attraction towards that person. And if it's Saturn, it's going to spark the sense of attraction towards the Saturn qualities within the Saturn person from the house person. So for the house person, they may feel the sense of great respect and even just a lot of admiration for the Saturn person from the beginning. And actually having the Saturn person Saturn in your first house is even going to affect the first house person as far as their self-identity and their self-image, and they could even begin to kind of emulate certain traits that the Saturn person has and project the Saturn person's qualities onto themselves. The connection that they share can be one that's pretty deep and goes beyond just the surface. But it can also be one that's a bit challenging to deal with at times, especially for the house person who feels like the Saturn person is being hard on them for seemingly no reason, but the Saturn person may be unaware of this effect on the first house person. Being that it is the first house, this relationship or this connection could mark the beginning of a new phase in both of their lives. And the house person can experience a lot of growth with being in connection to the Saturn person, who kind of helps them when it comes to getting through any difficulties or challenges that come up in their lives during this time. Having this synastry can show an attempt at being able to approach their relationship from a very serious and mature approach. And for the first house person, that could be something that is new to them, or is something that the Saturn person is kind of going to take the lead on being able to show them how to do in this relationship. But their relationship is one that can be very characterized by both of them having a lot of respect for each other and also a lot of mutual admiration for each other. This synastry is kind of going to give all those qualities that are necessary for building a long-term solid foundation within the relationship. But they would need to cooperate, because in the positive, it is a very supportive kind of relationship, and they're really helping each other when it comes to offering each other support, which leads to also them being able to have that sense of trust in their relationship. And they are both looking at the relationship from a very serious and more realistic lens with this placement, and they could have an understanding of the need to invest into their relationship and be willing to do that when it comes to time and effort and just being responsible and dedicated to each other's well-being and each other's growth within this relationship as individuals too. And on the other side, it can also be a bit challenging at times, especially because with Saturn coming into the first house, the house person may sometimes feel somewhat restricted by the Saturn person, even though the positives that come with this synastry can be enough to make it so that they are both willing to kind of work at overcoming those obstacles. There can still be those obstacles, which is why the potential for the commitment to be a long-term commitment and long-term partnership, including something like marriage, is very possible if they are both wanting that. With this synastry, the keyword is really cooperation, and they're gonna get what they intend on with this relationship out of it. The Saturn person could be somebody who has a lot of advice to offer the first house person and can even have a lot of guidance to give to the first house person. And the first house person can notice that in the Saturn person and really admire and appreciate this about them and have a lot of respect for the Saturn person. But it can also be frustrating for the first house person when they feel like the Saturn person is beginning to overstep or restrict them and kind of make them feel limited or pressured to be a certain way. In worst case scenario, the Saturn person makes the house person feel like they are being criticized for being who they are. And on the other hand, when it comes to the Saturn person, it can be true that the Saturn person looks at the first house person as being in need of their guidance, or being irresponsible, or just needing to have the Saturn person help them in certain ways when it comes to their growth and their maturity. And the Saturn person could be somebody that the first house person can learn from, and they could be somewhat of a mentor or a teacher or a guide. And the Saturn person can really appreciate the first house person's willingness to learn from them. And together, they can offer each other that support. And the Saturn person is going to point out places where the first house person needs to improve. But it's coming from a place where the Saturn person wants to see the first house person do well. They want to see them succeed. And over time, the Saturn person can actually learn from the first house person to kind of be a bit more lighthearted, be a bit more warm, or even just relax a little bit more with the first house person. The Saturn person may have been a bit skeptical of the first house person when it came to the beginning of the relationship, because the Saturn person may have looked at the first house person as having had needed their help, and they may have had a feeling that the first house person was in need of some help when it comes to being more disciplined and being a bit more serious. But the Saturn person comes to really have a respect for the first house person when they realize that the first house person is more capable than what they may have initially expected. And their relationship could be one that moves forward slowly, but it has a lot of respect that they gain and evolve into over time when it comes to their partnership. But both the Saturn person and the first house person have a lot to admire in each other. And they do, especially through every experience that they experience together. And they can have a very meaningful and deep connection with each other because of that. Relationship can be one that is very unforgettable, because those experiences can have a lot of first time experiences that they go through. The relationship with control for the Saturn person is going to be very important, because having your Saturn in somebody's first house can bring out issues when it comes to control. And perhaps the Saturn person may want to take on a more authoritative side, and that's why the Saturn person might want to be the person to call out any of the flaws in the first house person, judge them, scrutinize them, and even making the first house person kind of feel the sense of self-doubt. That could be because the Saturn person is relationship with controls really being brought out with this aspect between them and their partner. And the first house person may not want that kind of relationship, especially having positive aspects being made to Saturn or being made to the ascendant can make this synastry easier to deal with, and can also give that sense of validation to the ascendant person, that sense of acceptance, and the respect is easily felt when there are more positive aspects being made to the ascendant in synastry, and just overall more cooperation. Well, that does it for this video on having your Saturn in your partner's first house in synastry. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it helpful. If you did, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to this channel for more videos. Well, that is where I love and leave you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye guys.